Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for a very special webinar tonight. We're celebrating National Women's Health Week, and we've really got a treat for you here. Three fantastic female runners that are going to give you a lot of insight into their training, their nutrition, a whole variety of things that have helped them get to the level at which they're at. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our panel today and who we have on the discussion. My name is Varun Sriram. I'm your host tonight, and we're joined by, like I mentioned, three very accomplished runners. So let's just give a little bit of a rundown of who we've got here today, and we'll start with Julie Culley, who you see on your screen. Julie was Olympian for the 5,000 meter team at the Summer Olympics last year in London. Julie, how are you doing tonight? Thank you very much for joining us.
Good, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we've got Julie, and then we've got her Olympic teammate, Kim Conley. Kim also a 5,000 meter runner, and Kim is joining us from California. Kim, how are you doing tonight?
Good. I'm happy to be here.
And finally, we've also got Gabriele Anderson. Gabriele, a 1,500 meter runner, Olympic trials qualifier, very, very close to making that Olympic team, finished fourth at the trials, and also a miler as well. Gabe, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Varun. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you allowing a non-Olympian to take part in this webinar.
Oh, come on. Absolutely. We're thrilled to have all of you, and I think we're confident that
soon to be Gabe.
Only 3 more years.
Absolutely. We're confident that you're gonna join that crew. So what we really wanted you guys to lend your insight tonight is some of the things that have helped you all reach the level at which you're at. And like I touched on off the top, whether that's training, whether that's nutrition, there's a lot of things that go into being an elite runner. And as a female athlete, there's a lot of unique challenges that you all face that your male counterparts don't face. So we're going to get into all of that. But let's start with, I think one of the things that ties all of you in together is over the last year, you've all experienced, either a very significant improvement or really one of the crowning achievements in your career. All of you folks really have showed that you're at the top of your game right now. And, Julie, let's start with you. What are some of the keys for you to get to that level where you feel like you really last year burst onto the scene and made that improvement?
Well, I think it was a long time coming. I'm definitely one of the older ones in this group here. But I think what led to my success in 2012 was just kind of consistency over a few years of really, battling the ups and downs. But all those little details that go into our training that sometimes we take for granted, the stretching, the nutrition, the massage, all the ancillary things that we do are kind of what separate us and what can really lead to kind of a breakthrough year. So I was just lucky enough. I think that I worked very hard, but everything kind of worked out in all facets that kind of came together in June last year.
Kim, how about for you? Experienced a pretty big improvement over the last year in a lot of your times and culminated last year in an Olympic berth and even since then showing a lot of improvement. What are some of the things you can pinpoint that have really helped you raise your level of performance?
It's pretty similar to what Julie said. One of my favorite quotes that I would repeat to myself kind of in the years building up to 2012 was that it takes years of hard work to become an overnight success. And I think really the key for me last year was that I had built up really consistent training, and I was fortunate that I didn't get injured. I hadn't had an injury in several years, and so I think it was just stacking all those weeks and months and eventually years of training together that finally led to the big breakthrough.
And Gabe, how about you? Last but certainly not least, what have you found that's really helped you raise your level of performance?
Yeah, I think I can echo very similar things to what Julie and Kim have said. But for me, last year was my second full year as a professional runner and my second full year of being under my current coach. And so I think what allowed me to have a good year last year is just getting used to that style of training and believing in my training and really putting in the work on a consistent basis. I think consistency is something that all of us can touch on and talk about, the importance of getting in that consistent block of training that allows you to have those special races. And for me, that made a huge difference. But I think it was good for me that the Olympic year came, not in my first year out of college, but I had a little bit of time to get used to my new training, and that was helpful definitely last year.
So as we talk about consistency, and I'll start with you on this one, Gabriel. As we talk about consistency, a big part of being consistent is being healthy and, preventing injury. And I think for athletes, that's really so tied into performance is that health. What are some of the key things that you try to do to maintain that level of health that you need to perform?
Yeah, it's really important, obviously, to stay healthy in order to do the training. And I have been fortunate. My dad is actually a physical therapist, and so I've been working with him to stay healthy since I was in high school, and he's helped me to sort of boil it down to some key things that I need to work on to stay healthy. And I think for runners, it's always going to come down to flexibility. For me, I'm not a naturally flexible person, and so if there's any, especially hamstring tightness, that's something that's gonna be a problem for me. And so, my coach has a series of sort of hold exercises that we do to sort of promote that type of flexibility and to maintain that health and balance. But I also think that it's really important to, as runners, we put a lot of miles on these legs and a lot of pounding, and I think hip strength is something over the past 5 to 6 years, I guess, that the running community has finally recognized as something that's really important to keep runners healthy, and just having that functional leg strength. So I have a series of, specific hip exercises that I do 3 to 5 times a week, and it's really been a critical factor in me staying healthy and avoiding injuries that have plagued me when I was a little bit younger and first starting out in running. So yeah, those are a couple of the things for sure.
That's great. Very very good insight into some specific areas where you feel like you need to make yourself more flexible to perform. And Kim, for you, when you're talking about being injury free, have you found that your routine before you go out and run is more important? Is it your post run routine that's more important, or is it tough to pinpoint one over the other?
I think it's actually the things I do in between the training session. So I usually get massage once a week, and I see an active release therapist every other week, and I see a physical therapist on the alternate weeks that I don't see the active release therapist. So I'm kind of getting hands-on body work at least twice a week, and so they definitely helped keep me healthy. And then in addition, they also teach me exercises, kind of like what Gabe was talking about, so that when I'm away from them, there's a lot of things that I'm doing to keep my body stronger. And then the other thing, not just trying to stay injury free. Another key for me was just trying to do. It sounds really obvious, but do things like wash my hands and use hand sanitizer all the time, because not getting sick, I think, at all last winter and the whole 6 months leading up to trials was really big for me.
It's actually, I think we had a question coming in from Matt in the chat asking if any of you three get ART therapy, active release therapy done. And, so Kim, you were a little prophetic there, reading his mind. I don't know if you saw his question in there or not, but it's a good time for me to tell you folks that are with us that if you have any questions for Julie, Gabe, or Kim, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and we'll definitely address them and pose the questions to any of them who you'd like to ask it to. So we definitely do encourage your participation. Julie, as we talk about staying healthy, because it's so critical not to miss a workout, especially when you're preparing for something like the Olympics. Leading up to that time period where you were going through that really intense training to prepare for the Olympic trials and for the Olympics last year, what were you doing to really make sure that at that big moment you were feeling 100%?
I guess to kind of piggyback off what the girls were saying, it's actually a bigger team effort than I think most people really imagine, because you have to keep the stress levels of the athlete to an absolute minimum. So if that's emotional stress or physical stress, whatever that might be. So I know, when it comes to having gotten ready for last year, I had to have my family on board, my coach on board, my friends on board, my support staff on board, with kind of just keeping me in a rhythm. Anything that pops up, obviously life is hard to control, but life stresses can also really, take you off course too. So the combination of all of those individuals that are kind of on your team, and what I mean by team is, I actually had a therapist a couple of years ago tell me that if I wanted to make the Olympic team in 2012, I had to create Team Julie. And that sounds maybe, arrogant and egotistical, but it's not. It's really just having that team of people. Maybe it's your physical therapist, your chiropractor, your massage therapist, your coach, your sports psychologist, your parents, your boyfriend or significant other, whoever that might be, your friends, who are all kind of there, and they understand your goals and they understand what it is that you're trying to do. So I think, leading into last year, obviously, you do the workouts, you do all the things your coach tells you to do those little things, you try to stay healthy, but you have to have all those people kind of on board, knowing and understanding that this is what you're trying to do. And having that rhythm, having all of them there, supporting you is kind of, for me, what really got me through and kept me healthy and on track. So I'm very thankful to them for all of that. But that's a huge part of what we do, is having that support staff, having those people that believe in us.
It's a great point, because so much of being a top athlete or even running is that mental focus, and having everything aligned outside of running in your life is certainly going to help you focus mentally, like you mentioned. So it's a very good point, Julie. And we have a couple people. Gabe raised the point of hip flexibility as a runner, and we heard a little bit of her perspective on it. But Julie, I wanted to ask you too. As somebody that's transitioning now from the 5K, the 5,000 meters, to the longer stuff, to the half marathons and the marathon, how important is hip flexibility for you and for any top runner in general?
That's something obviously Gabe, touched on, and that's something I think a lot of us have started to focus on in the last few years. For me, it's hip flexibility, it's core strength, and me in particular, I have had hamstring issues for the last few years. We all have our Achilles heel, and so we all have our specific areas that we really do have to focus on. And I think, right now I'm still focused on the 5K. I tried to focus on the marathon this past fall and didn't have my shot at running it, but hopefully this fall. But again, as you move up in distance, I think all of these things become even more pronounced, because you're out there for a longer period of time getting the work in, and you're putting more miles in, and you're out there a lot more on your feet. So all those little glitches in your body are going to kind of show through a little bit more. So, some advice that I got going into marathon training last fall was, all the therapy that you do for track, double it. And that's what you'll need to be doing to get ready for the marathon. So if you go to the chiropractor twice a week, you should be going 3 to 4 times a week. If you get one massage, you should be getting 2 massages. So you definitely have to kind of step up your game, I think, as you go into longer distances, because there's a lot more wear and tear over those longer distances.
Now, Gabriel, you were talking about raising the point of hip flexibility, and I'm staying with this a little bit, because we have about 4 or 5 different people that are asking questions on this. What are some specific exercises, if you can describe them as best you can, sort of just without visually being able to show us? What are some of the things that you do to strengthen that hip flexibility?
Oh yeah, well, I will try my best to describe what it is that I do. But I do a little bit of I guess I use sandbag weights for hip strength. And so I use weights. I use the overload principle to really try to gain some real strength in my legs and my hips. And I can't really, I mean, some of them are just like sideline leg raises when you're laying on your side on the ground, and there's I think it can be described as like a clam exercise, and another one, there's just a series of exercises. I can't exactly, I'll try to get a list, I guess, in my head, and I'll try to get back to you. But pretty much what these do are, I mean, a lot of people do these as part of their general strength routine, but I just add, I add weight to really try to fire those muscles in my hips that I don't necessarily do, before a run. So I used to just do them after runs, but I found that if I can fire those muscles in your hips, those deeper glute muscles, I find that I feel a lot better on my runs, and it's just a way to wake up those important muscles before you go running. So that's helped me. Something I do for hip flexibility. My coach has a kind of a series of, we call them holds, and it's basically just a prolonged stretch. So you can just kind of, I'll try to describe, I guess it's like just like a lunge position, and you're just going to hold it for a while, and you don't want to hold it, to a point where it's incredibly painful, but it's just like a stretch that's longer than, 5 to 10 seconds. It's like a 30-second to 40 to maybe a minute long stretch. And, it's, let's see, it's like a side lunge, forward lunge. We have a series that we do, but pretty much, it's like prolonged stretching in those areas. And then I do, the functional leg strength routine, basically. That's what I do.
Nice, that's good. So that's valuable to know that holding the stretch for a long period of time is something that people can try to employ to strengthen that flexibility. That's good. And Kim, for you now as a 5K runner, what are the longest that your runs typically get in your training? When you're going on your really long run, how many miles are you putting in?
I do several 2-hour long runs a year, and last winter we did actually get up to 20 miles, so I'm going pretty far, I think, for a 5K runner.
So in pushing the distance, when you're getting to those 20 miles, how important do you feel like your core strength is to help you push through? I mean, whether it's the shorter distances or the longer distance, how important is that core strength overall?
Oh, I think it's very important. Just having good core strength, especially in the late stages of a long run like that, it helps you maintain your form when you're getting tired. And if you can stay really composed, just like physically, then you're less likely to develop some of the overuse injuries that you might otherwise if you were letting things slip up.
What are some exercises that you do, similar to what we just asked Gabriel? What are some exercises you do to strengthen your core?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to go back to the topic of the hips really quickly, because the hips for me are like my big, kind of like Julie talked about, the Achilles heel. And so when I see the active release therapist, he's working on opening up my hip capsule. So we're doing that every other week, because all the other little problems that pop up from time to time, in the end, when we go back up the chain, we realize it's because my hips have gotten tight. So I do a lot of things to improve my hip flexibility. And then I do core, I have a whole core routine. A lot of it's with med balls and stability balls that I do after practice. And then I'm in the weight room twice a week as well, doing a lot of core exercises in there.
So what a lot of the questions and we've started talking about this right now, but a lot of the types of questions that we have coming in are people are wondering, what types of things you guys do outside of your running, in terms of workouts to incorporate into your training. So I do want to move on a little bit to that topic, and we started talking about it, but let's dive into it a little deeper, and we'll do it by proposing you guys some specific questions. So Julie, you start. I'm gonna have you start with this one, and then sort of go down the line. How often are you? And Nicole wants to know how often you're doing strength work. How often are you doing drills, and how often are you doing plyometrics?
Hey, I do, I guess, twice a week with New Jersey New York Track Club. We do a series of hurdle drills. So my coach, Frank Gagliano, is really adamant of having us do that. So that goes back to some of the hip strength exercises that people have been asking about. So we do probably 10 to 12 different drills over hurdles twice a week. And on top of that, I have a strength and condition coach that I work with, and he prescribes a plan for me. And so I'm in the gym 2 to 3 times a week, doing specific, kind of Olympic strengthening type of routine, which has actually been phenomenal for me. And again, when I kind of go back to talking about that team of individuals that I have, my chiropractor and my strength coach are good friends. And so that to me has been a really helpful balance, having the two of them kind of coordinating. So, the one is able to kind of really define what my weaknesses are, and as I graduate from some of those weaknesses, to move to another thing to work on. And so the strength coach has been able to do that. So I do probably 3 to 5 days a week of more, I guess, like core strength type of stuff that I get from my chiropractor. And then I'm in the gym 2 to 3 days a week doing actual strength work with weights and stuff.
Gabriel, how about you? As running the shorter distances, that kick at the end, for all of you really, but especially comes into play for you a lot. And I know when I saw you in Minnesota this winter, you were talking about how you were it was a long winter and you were focusing a lot on your strength work. Is that something that's sort of increased for you as your the level of performance has progressed, and how often are you doing strength work?
Yeah, Varn, could you just repeat part of that question? I think that I totally didn't hear half of it. I don't
No
know
problem.
If my connection is bad.
No worries at all. So I was just saying, we chatted this winter, and you were talking about how you were sort of upping your strength work. So as you've progressed and your performance has gotten better and better, have you found that the frequency at which you're doing strength work has increased?
Yeah, I guess definitely. I, have experimented a little bit, and I will say that my coach and I have sort of come to a place where I still do keep running the main thing at this point, and as I have experimented, I have, I've sort of tempered my, introduction of new things. We've, introduced a little bit of Olympic lifting, and that's something that I didn't used to do as much in college, and I think that has helped me. I also am still doing explosive plyometrics twice a week, and I think that's been really helpful. And also just continuing to do hill sprints. I think that's been something that is, sort of overlooked as a strength building type of exercise. It's not using weights or anything, but you're running up a hill, and I think that can have a similar effect. So those are some of the things that I've continued to do as I've introduced it a little bit more, but I still do the outside things just as a supplement to my running. So I'm still at the point where I'm still kind of trying to find a balance between keeping my running the main thing and adding supplements, in proportion to that, I guess.
And Kim, I'll pose the same one to you. How frequently are you doing strength training? How many times a week? And I'll also ask you this. The second part of the question is, when you're doing your strength training, is it high rep, low weight, or are you trying to do a few reps and high weight? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I said it earlier, but I do core exercises after my workouts twice a week, and then separately I'm in the weight room twice a week. And the weight room sessions, they really kind of blend some more core work, a lot of single leg stability exercises, some plyometrics, and then some Olympic lifts. And especially with the Olympic lifts, I definitely am keeping the reps high and the weight low.
Okay, so high rep, low weight makes sense. And if you can sort of just what is the logic behind that, if you can explain it?
Part of it just goes back to being, a distance athlete. And so we're always focused a little bit more on the endurance than anything. But also with my body type, I put on muscle mass pretty easily. And so we want to stay away from bulking up with a lot of weight.
Okay, very interesting. So let's keep it just looking through some of these questions. So many people are curious about all aspects of your routine, and I think we've talked a little bit about strength training, but another very important thing, of course, for any runner is stretching. Julie, what is your stretching routine like? Maybe start with before a run. How elaborate is it? How long do you spend on stretching before a run?
I actually get made fun of by a lot of my counterparts because I have like the longest warm up ever. But if I'm just rolling out the door for a run, I usually hit up a couple of key spots that seem to tighten up on me. On a daily basis, I try to hit them up before I go out the door, but most of them are dynamic movements, exercises. I never do static stretching before I head out for a run. But when it comes to an actual interval workout, it takes me almost an hour to warm up. So that includes a 3-mile jog and then tons of active drills. So I do also a lot of rope stretching to kind of hit up some of those key spots. And afterwards, most of my stretching is on the foam roller. So I do some static stretching after a workout, but for the most part, I try to just kind of work on some of those, a little bit of like the active release through the dynamic movement. And a lot of that is on the foam roller.
Gabriel, could you do you have any for you? Do you feel like what the stretching you do before you work out compared to the stretching you do post workout is one of them play more of a critical role than the other?
I guess that's hard to say for me. I think they are complementary. I don't know that one is more important. Like Julie said, I think dynamic flexibility and dynamic stretching is something that helps us a lot before we're preparing for those hard sessions, and those are something that I have progressively added into my warm-up routine, especially before those hard workouts. And I don't do a ton of static stretching, but I'm of course not going to do that before I go out for a run. But for me, I do a little bit of static stretching, after my running is done for the day. For me, my hamstrings and my hips are usually going to tighten up if I don't stretch them. So, but I think the pre-workout and post-workout stretching are both important. But of course, we're going to stay away from static stretching. I think it's pretty much unanimous that that's kind of not the route we're going to go anymore. But I do think that the dynamic flexibility and is something that is really important to do before those hard speed sessions for me.
So, Kim, as Gabe's talking about dynamic stretching, and it, I'm sure you're gonna weigh in similarly here. So let's put a little different spin on this question for you, and maybe you can describe dynamic stretching routine. What's a dynamic stretching routine that you do like for you, and if you could tell us whether this is either a routine pre-run or post-run.
So every day for me starts with a pre-run dynamic warm-up routine. And the way I like to think of it is I start slow and get faster. And so I start with some core exercises actually just to like warm up my core. And then I do like a knee hug so you're kind of walking along the track and you hug your knee up to your chest. And then on the opposite leg, you actually like go up on your tiptoe and then squeeze your glute. So you're kind of activating like all the muscles up the chain, and then you go back on the other leg doing it. And so that's one of the slower ones. And I won't go through, I won't go into detail on every single exercise, but there's a whole bunch that I go through. And so that one's like a slow one, and it gets progressively faster with different drills and things that I'm doing. And eventually I start running out, and then the runs get faster and faster as I'm running out. And I just feel like by doing that, I get totally warmed up by it before I even get out the gate for my run. So I feel a lot better, whether I'm going to go get warmed up then for a workout or even just going out for a run. Like I feel really good as soon as I start running instead of going through that like mile or 2 mile like lull where you're getting into things.
When did you is stretching something? I mean, when you're younger, I'm sure the body gets looser, and now you guys are all young, but when the body gets looser quicker, has there been a time where when in your career where you felt like, okay, now I really have to make stretching a much bigger part of my routine?
Well, the way it actually worked for me was that my coach had me start doing the dynamic warm-up, and at first I kind of balked at it a little bit because it just seemed like a lot of extra stuff to do, and I just wanted to go run. But but I started doing it, because he wanted me to, and then what I found was that if I didn't do it, then I suddenly realized what a difference it had been making, and so now it's definitely part of the routine for me, and I enjoy doing it.
Julie, with stretching, now that we've seen a lot of athletes, and even a lot of individuals, just incorporating yoga into their routine. In recent years, it's become very popular. Is yoga something that you've tried? Is it something that you practice at all in the context of stretching?
Yeah, I have actually had a lot of experience with yoga throughout my running career, and I think it serves a lot of different purposes, and one of my favorite parts about yoga is kind of the meditation part. It kind of helps me to reflect a little bit on everything that's been going on in my life, and I actually used to do it right after a workout, so it was a great time to kind of bring the core temperature of the body down and stretch and kind of work through some of those particularly, I guess, tight spots that you would have from your workout or your individual tight spots. But yoga is kind of, it's not like a new craze. I mean, and people have been into it for a while, and they have a lot of classes, specific yoga classes for runners that do hit up some of those major problem areas for runners. And I think a lot of the yoga practice, though, it's not usually a lot of static. There is some static stretching to some of those classes, but a lot of it is kind of just a flow, like a movement flow. And so you might hold a pose, but then you move into something else. So it kind of works on both strengthening and stretching at the same time. And I've definitely had a lot of success with that.
So I think, to wrap up the stretching part of the discussion, before we move on to another topic, what it seems like all of you have been highlighting is that the dynamic stretching and attempting to simulate the movement of running is what you're really focusing on as much as possible in your stretch. So I think all three of you emphasize the point that you're not doing much, just, stand and grab your quad, or stand and, grab your ankle and pull it up to your leg. You're not really doing that kind of stretching, but it's really stretching that's going to simulate the run. So I think that's valuable for folks to hear. Now, before I move on to our next larger topic, we did have an interesting question from Gene and Julie. I'll start with you here because you were just talking. You've talked a little bit about the mental side of running, for whether it was Team Julie or whether it was the mental aspect of yoga. And Gene wants to know what is more enjoyable to you, the physical challenge of training or the mental challenge of training? And I guess enjoy is sort of a an interesting word in this context, but it's a good question. So where do you weigh in on that?
I think I definitely would say the mental challenge. I think that the greatest part about 2012 was doing something that somewhere deep down inside of me I knew that I could do, but I kind of overcame a whole lot of things and a lot of negativity and a lot of doubt. And to me, that was the most rewarding part. I mean, you definitely have to enjoy the physical part of it because it's a lot of pain to put yourself through, if not. But I think more importantly than anything else is just, we get to every single day put a piece of a pyramid, a block into a pyramid and work towards something. And, every day I get to go to bed knowing that I, took one step closer to that goal. And I think mentally that's that's so satisfying to me, knowing that I'm working towards something every single day, that at the end of the day I finish the day knowing that I did something to work towards this great goal that I have. So when you get to accomplish those goals, it's like, yeah, I mean, and it's your dreams coming true, really. But the physical part of it is obviously the challenge to get yourself there. But sometimes part of that too is challenging yourself mentally to being able to rein in the physical part. So sometimes, people think you need to work harder to be better, but sometimes you have to work smarter. So there's definitely a balance between that physical and mental.
Kim, I'll spin the question a little bit differently for you. What's more difficult for you? Is it the mental aspect of a tough training cycle, or is it the physical aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the mental part is tougher, because I was going to say that I definitely prefer. I enjoy the physical part. I just love the feeling of working hard and finishing a really good workout, and especially that's why I love races, because I love being able to just go to the well and feeling like I laid everything out there and just working as hard as I can. So yeah, I guess, yeah, definitely the mental piece is more challenging for me. And Julie, I really like just listening to what you just had to say. I think I'm going to appreciate my easy days a little bit more now.
Gabe, coming off that same question, when we're talking about the mental part of training, how do you build that mental confidence? Is there anything in particular you do? Is there anything you think about specifically in your training to help build that mental confidence?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the mental confidence comes from doing the work, and it's kind of like a cyclical thing. It's like you do the work, you start to believe in yourself a little bit more, and you can do more work, and it kind of feeds off of each other. But I think the mental aspect of training it's really important to try to master, I guess, because for me anyway, it's constantly trying to overcome those doubts, like, can I really do this? Can I really do this workout? Can I really run that fast? Can I really, win this race? Those are things that we, confront in practice every day, and the more often that you do it and put yourself out there, the easier it is to do in races. But for me, I mean, I can gain confidence, from trying to page through my training diary and remind myself of all the tough times that I pushed through, and how good it feels to have a great race where you feel like you raced to your potential. And I think that's something that is helpful to make a record of all the work that you've done, and also make a record of kind of like how you felt going into races and how you felt coming out. It's easy to forget the range of emotions that you go through in a training cycle. But I think that it's great to remind yourself of how gratifying it feels to achieve a goal, and to have a positive attitude throughout your training cycle it's so important to get yourself to the end result. I think it's fascinating because it's such a challenge, and I think that's what keeps runners coming back, and it's a lifelong sport. It's just fun to try to challenge those limits mentally and physically.
So I really actually, and I know a lot of people in the audience, judging by the comments, really enjoyed what all three of you said. It's a lot of great insight, because I think that sometimes lost in athletics is people see these really highly trained athletes, and you think that they're just either gifted with great genes, or maybe sometimes they've just put in such a extreme amount of physical work that's why they're performing. But you all spoke to what a mental game it is as well, and it's fascinating to hear you talk about that. Let's move on a little bit to nutrition. I know it's hard to you can't talk about running without talking about fueling. And Julie, we'll start here again with you. When in your career did you realize how important nutrition was, that it was something that was really going to be critical for you to hone in on in order to achieve what you wanted to in the sport?
I think for me that was almost by default. About a little over 4 years ago, I started on a gluten-free diet, and it was an interesting journey to get to that point. But once I went gluten-free and really made a commitment to my health and my diet, I started seeing a significant difference in my performances. And so I think going from, not really paying attention to my diet and just kind of using it as calories, like calories are calories, kind of having that attitude, to really focusing on the quality of calories and the different kinds of foods and vitamins that I was putting into my body, seeing that significant difference in performance and the way that I felt every day, my attitude, was really a game changer for me. Focusing on food being your fuel instead of food just being kind of a means to an end. So I've made a lot of changes in the last 4 years to my diet, and I think that's been a huge part of my success over the last few years.
Now, one of those things that you implemented, and I believe it was probably around last April that you and I got together in New York City, and you really started ramping up your use of Generation UCAN in your training. Can you just speak to how you've been using it in your training and the impact that you felt it's had on you?
Sure. I was introduced to Gen UCAN 2 falls ago by a friend who actually used to work for Gen UCAN. And he and I just met for coffee one day to kind of catch up, and he was talking to me a little bit about what he's been up to, and he started talking to me about the company. And, without it being a total sales pitch, he talked to me a bit about what Gen UCAN can do, and I was having trouble with my long runs. I think, I was transitioning up with my in distance as a 5K runner. Like Kim said, she's done a couple 18, 20 milers. I was kind of moving up into that trend, up into the 20s for some of my long runs, and had been trying to use goos and different fueling items, and I was always crashing at the end of my runs. And so my friend Chris told me that there was this product out there that made it so that I didn't have to crash at the end of my runs, and I didn't even realize that was possible. So he gave me some free samples of Gen UCAN, and I went out and I used it, and I was sold. For the first time, I was finishing long runs feeling as good as I did at the halfway point, or from the first half of it. So it has been a staple for me for coming up on 2 years this fall. So I recommend it to anybody. It's been part of my 5K training on the track, and it was part of my marathon training last fall, trying to prepare for New York City.
Kim, how about you overall nutrition? When did nutrition become something that you felt like was really important? In terms of taking your performance to the next level.
It's kind of been a process for me. I would say it started towards the end of college, but really it's something that we reassess every year. I mean, at the end of every season, my coach and I sit down and we reassess everything, and nutrition's always a topic that we hit on, and we're always trying to find ways to refine it and get a little bit better. And I would really say, actually, it's since being in London and meeting Julie and other athletes, and maybe like last year even, I still had a little bit of the mentality that Julie touched on about, like calories in, calories out. And so it's really only in the last few months that I've really started to kind of shift my ideas about the quality of the calories you're putting in the body. And hopefully that's going to translate into some good things coming up this spring. We'll see.
For you, Julie talked about the way she's been using UCAN to fuel her long runs and give her that consistent energy. You and I've spoken about the way you've used it and felt like it's really helped you get pretty lean. And you've been lean already, but you felt like it's really helped you lean out even more. Can you touch on that a little bit and how you've been using it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things for me is appetite management, just to try to keep in competition leanness. And it's been really good for me post long runs. I really like the recovery Gen UCAN because I was really having a problem crashing. Before I would drink a chocolate milk right after I ran. That's kind of like the common thing out there is drink chocolate milk as your recovery fuel. And but there's a ton of sugar in chocolate milk. And so, I would drink it, and maybe it is good for recovery, but then I would bonk so hard, and I was not very fun to be around if I didn't get like a full meal in me right away. And so having Gen UCAN has been huge, especially when we travel for long runs and things like that. So I can have that right after I run, and then I can go a couple hours before I need to actually have the full meal, which is really nice. And then it's also been really good for me on some of the days where, I do a pretty substantial run in the morning, and then I come back in the evening and I do another run, and I go in the weight room. I usually incorporate it into a smoothie as kind of that afternoon snack, and it really holds me over well throughout the evening.
Gabe, we're gonna say same thing with you, and before I introduce this topic to you, I just remember a funny conversation that we had around the Boston Marathon last year when you were in Boston running the BAA mile, and you were talking about being a younger runner and sort of always just guessing about what to do before a meet, whether it was a candy bar. And I remember the exact quote you said to me was, "I used to have a Snickers bar and I don't know what I was thinking." But when did nutrition become something that was really a focus for you, similar to what we asked Julie and Kim?
Yeah, well, it was sometime after 7th grade when I used to eat a mini Snickers bar before my cross country races. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly where I got that, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I'd like to think I've come a long way since then. But definitely it feels like a guessing game sometimes. I did not have a routine for fueling in high school or really college either. So when I became a post-collegiate professional athlete, I started to take these aspects of my training more seriously and started looking for ways to sort of up my game and to sort of, we do all this training, and I think it's like you want to get an insurance policy on all this training. You don't want to do all this training and not be fueling right or be recovering afterwards. It's like, doing the ancillary work to prevent injury. It's like fueling and recovery is so important, and I could see that it was important, but I wasn't sure what to do. So I definitely did a lot of experimenting, and that's kind of how I came to Gen UCAN in the summer of 2011, I believe. And I remember having success with it right away. And as a miler, I do a wide variety of training. My long runs probably aren't as long as Julie's or Kim's, but I'm doing a lot of different training, and I found that it helps me, to stay fueled throughout my longest runs that I do as a miler, but also I do these short, really intense workouts also, and I use Gen UCAN the same way that I do for my long runs as I do for these shorter runs, and I feel the same benefit. I need that sustained energy throughout a session of doing, shorter sprint work on the track, and so it has taken the guesswork out of that. And as professional athletes and just as people who have busy schedules generally, I think that Gen UCAN is incredibly convenient for me. If I'm on the road, I think sometimes you find yourself without a meal, and a recovery Gen UCAN to like get you through the day or just to take after workout is so critical. So it's been a huge help for me.
And Shelby wants to know, Gabe, how long for a miler? I asked Kim about this for her, but for you as a miler or a 1,500-meter runner, how long are your long runs?
Yeah, that's a great question. My long runs are usually no longer than 15 or 16 miles at the longest, but usually throughout my year, if I'm doing a long run once a week, it's no shorter than 12 miles and not longer than 16. So not quite hitting 2 hours, but still getting the miles in.
Very cool. So for some of you folks who aren't familiar with UCAN, we teased it a little bit towards the end of the session for anybody that's a little more interested in finding out exactly what all three of them are talking about. We will just give a very brief review of what UCAN is, and I think the consistent thing that they all hit on was that real steady and stable energy without a crash, and then we'll tell you a little bit about what makes UCAN unique and how it provides that. But I think an important topic that I do want to close, sort of not necessarily close with, but explore is it being Women's Health Week. Part of this reason we got all three of you on here as well was to discuss, some of the challenges that female athletes face compared to their male counterparts, and how you deal with those, some strategies you have to deal with that. And so, Julie, let's start with you, and maybe you could focus on one or two things that you found in your years sort of separates a female runner from a male runner, and what you do to deal with it.
Oh, female runner versus male runner. I don't know. I think we just have different challenges in general. I think that I hear a lot of men telling me that women can handle a lot of more work than men can. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe the girls can chime in on that. But I think that, some of the challenges that we have are kind of external to the sport. There's definitely challenges within the sport, but some of the challenges that I think that maybe people don't think about are, how do you stay in the sport as a female, and, are the opportunities available for you? I think a lot of women take different career choices. Maybe they decide to start a family. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Kim, let's go to you on that, and it might even be you could hit on it from a nutrition angle, or if there's something else that comes to mind. And I know I'm sort of throwing this at you guys and maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, but just curious to hear if there's anything, as you guys have ran collegiately and ran professionally and been around a lot of female athletes and male athletes, if there's anything you've heard in your experiences that you might be able to share.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is just that we have different bodies. And so I think that it ties into some of the injury stuff and what you do for injury prevention. And I think, a lot of like the hip stuff, is definitely prevalent among the female athletes. And then with the nutrition, it seems like a lot of the men in my life have much faster metabolisms than I do. So it's kind of going back to that, trying to really dial in the nutrition in a different way or maybe in a more challenging way than it seems like some of the guys have to deal with.
Gabe, anything to add on this topic, or anything that you've encountered in your experience?
Yeah, I think I can add a little bit, I guess. I think for female runners, female athletes, I think that, there's always that delicate relationship between, nutrition and, as runners, we aim to be lean. And, with our body image as women, I think that's something that's always sort of not necessarily a struggle, but something that is going to be that female runners and female athletes have to address at some point in their career as an athlete. Like, what are the means that they're going to go to fuel their bodies and, try to, look like an athlete or look like how they think a runner should look. I think in college especially, I was on a big team of women, and, everyone has a different type of experience with, fueling and, losing weight, gaining weight. I think girls and women definitely have a little bit more of a tender relationship with food generally. And for me, I don't think I would have made it to become a professional athlete had I not, addressed some of those issues early on and tried to really focus on having a healthy relationship with food, and to see food as fuel and not see my body as just something that I guess has to maintain a certain look or something. I guess it's sort of hard to articulate, but I think that as female athletes, it's still tough. The body image issues are tough, and I think it's important for women to talk about it together, and especially, as young athletes, I think, I was lucky to have really good role models when I was in high school and college and trying to figure out that balance. But I think it can be a struggle for women, definitely.
So it's a great point you raised with the body image issue, Gabe, and I'm glad you touched on that. Julie, let's kick it back to you. I know you had something to add.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of add to what Gabriel was saying. I had the pleasure of being a collegiate coach actually prior to coming back to training as a full-time athlete and eventually as a professional runner. And I coached a women's track team, Division I, and one of the big things that we had to deal with as a coaching staff was body image issues, and that's something that does actually affect men, but not at the same capacity, I think, or the amount of individuals than it does to women. And I think that that's something that is still a really big problem in our sport is individuals kind of focusing on what you're supposed to look like as opposed to, the process of training and all those, all the different topics that we talked about tonight, the nutrition and the actual training and the strength training and all those little details that kind of go into it. I've seen a couple of athletes that come into our training group, the New Jersey New York Track Club, and, some of the girls have this kind of image of what they're now supposed to look like as a professional. And, I try to talk to them a little bit about, it's a process. Your body will change over time, and maybe it doesn't change, but it doesn't have to happen overnight. I think there's this kind of overwhelming feeling that there's just this look that you're supposed to have as a professional runner. And, if you look at the women who are running in these different races, if you look at the 800-meter girls up to the 10,000-meter girls, even the girls within those races, within those fields, they all have very, very, very different body types. And I think that that's one of the things that makes our sport so unique is that there are so many different types of women who are good at the same exact distance. So there's no specific mold. I think that maybe in the past, 10, 20 years ago, women kind of thought you were supposed to look a certain way. But our fastest, 800-meter runners are so are some of the most ripped, strong women that I've ever seen, and they're beautiful. And we have definitely different varying body types all across the board, even up to the marathon. So I think that this is still something that definitely plagues women. But hopefully the more we talk about it, the more people will realize that it's, we're just what we do, and the reason that Gabriel and myself and Kim are able to stay in the sport so long is that we take care of our bodies, and part of that is nutrition, and then all these other topics that we talk about.
Great stuff, Julia. It's, I think everything you said there is super and great for people to hear. Kim, as we start talking about this subject of nutrition, I mean, the questions are flying in, and so I'm going to try to just sort of pose a few different a question to each of you guys individually, and let us get some insight on some of the stuff that people are asking. Kim, if you have anything to lend to the body image topic that we were talking about, please feel free. But another question that we've had a few people ask is, as a female athlete, and actually just interrupted Julie, we had several comments coming in here, just commending you on what you said. So I think that was very, very, very well put. But Kim, for you, a few people have asked as a female athlete if you find that it's more important for you than a male athlete to supplement with iron. Is that something you do, supplementing with iron, and is it something that you found important?
Yeah, I definitely do supplement with iron every day. I have for a few years, and if I'm going to altitude, then I actually double my intake of iron in the 6 weeks leading up to an altitude trip. So it's definitely important, and I know that with women especially, it can be more of a problem than with men, but it can also definitely be a problem with men too. I also coach, kind of like Julie was talking about, and we usually have our athletes get blood tests done, and you'd be surprised with the number of men that come back with low iron as well.
Okay, so it is something you focus on. Kim, overall in your diet, is there a specific, ratio of carb to fat and protein that you try to follow? Is there sort of a simple rule of thumb that you may have to just help guide you overall in your diet?
No, I mean, I definitely don't weigh or measure anything and aim for an exact ratio. I try to keep it pretty balanced. I will eat a little bit more of, carbohydrates, whole grains, like maybe the night before a long run and then after a long run is the most important for the refueling of, when you've depleted your glycogen stores. So, maybe if Sunday, say, is a long run day, then, Sunday afternoon is a little bit heavier on the carbohydrates, but otherwise, I just try to keep it pretty balanced.
Gabe, how about you? Any specific vitamins or minerals that you sort of emphasize in your diet over others when you're in the midst of some serious training?
Yeah, I guess I'm somewhat similar to what Kim said. I do supplement with iron as well. I found that is very important. I would be surprised if there were a lot of female athletes or female runners who weren't supplementing with iron, because I just feel like it's a pretty prevalent issue. So I do supplement with iron. I also take I'm aware of what I'm eating, and I definitely go for the whole grains and, always trying to add more fruits and vegetables and lean proteins to my diet. But I don't follow a strict ratio with my diet. I'm just, looking for that balance, and I don't deprive myself of anything necessarily. If I'm approaching the peak of my training cycle, I'm definitely a little bit more aware of what's going into my body, and trying to just put myself in the best position to race well. And for me, I guess, I've read the book Racing Weight by Matt Fitzgerald, and I just think it's that book kind of helped me to, I don't know, put just sort of the eating habits and, as women, like we were just talking about, I think that sometimes people are scared to say that there is like an ideal racing weight, and I think I've just come to terms with the fact that I do have a racing weight, an ideal sort of range that I want to be at when I'm racing, but also, it's totally normal to gain weight in the off season, and I allow myself to do that as well. But that was a good resource for me coming out of college, just to sort of get a perspective on that.
And again, I love this question that Shelby just asked. So since you're up right now, Gabe, I'll ask it to you. And I promise I won't tell your coach, but you ever allow yourself to have a beer every once in a while, or have a drink every once in a while?
Oh, of course I do. Yes.
So it's
in a way, yes.
I think I thought that was funny, and it's I think what you said is important. It's important to allow yourself to enjoy life, and if enjoying life means going out and having a beer every once in a while, it's not going to obviously. And Shelby just commented with yay, and with 2 exclamation points. So that's right, Shelby. You can run at the level that all these ladies do, and still go out and have a beer every once in a while. It's not going to kill you. Julie, we had a UCAN specific question directed at you, coming from Tanya, and Tanya wanted to know if there's any difference in the way you use UCAN to fuel short, fast workouts or races versus your longer runs or your tempo runs.
Is that for me?
That was for you. Yep, Julie. Yep.
Oh, okay. No, not necessarily. I actually take Gen UCAN the same way I would for a 2.5 hour long run to a short speed workout. So, right now, especially training for the 5K, we have kind of dabble a little bit in both. We do speed work, we do strength endurance, and we do long runs. And I use Gen UCAN the same way that I would for any of those workouts. The only thing that I might do different is if I'm going on a past weekend I did an 18-mile long run, and so I brought a second bottle of Gen UCAN out on my run and planted it somewhere so I could pick it up. I guess it was around 10 miles, so I could have a little bit of boost going into the back end of it. So Darren, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gen UCAN is supposed to kind of the steady release kind of works for about a 2-hour period. So I think that if I start to break over that 2-hour period, I have it before I hit the 2-hour period to kind of keep me through the next and last part of the long run.
Yep, that's so what you're saying is absolutely right. And we had somebody actually had another question for you asking if you do fuel with it for your really long runs, are you carrying it in a flask? But it sounds like, you don't want to run with anything in your hand. So what you're doing is hiding that bottle. And then of course, on race day, you'll have it at the elite table, so you don't have to worry about carrying it.
Yeah. I mean, I have, some long runs I've been on, I've had somebody in the past, I've had people on bikes with me, so they'll carry it on their bike. But like for this past weekend, I just was with a bunch of friends and I hid the bottle, and so that when I came back, I just picked it up. So I ran with it, I guess, for the first couple of miles, and then came back and got it around 10.
And Julie, are you usually doing just one packet before, and that's what you're finding, lasts you for the first portion of that run? Is that right?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Are you usually just using one packet before, or are you using a higher dose of UCAN before a long run?
I use one packet, and then I'll use a second packet for the back end of it. But I don't usually, I shouldn't say a second packet. I usually have about a half a packet for the second bottle that I take.
Okay. Interesting. Guys, we're at about a little bit over an hour. I wanted to wrap up your portion of this. I really appreciate you guys spending time with us tonight. And like I mentioned, you guys have all hit a little bit on your use of UCAN. Seth, a registered dietitian, is going to come on here in about 5 minutes and just give everyone who's interested a brief overview of what UCAN is and how it's a unique fuel source. But let's end on this one because I really like this question. We have for somebody asked for people that aren't professional runners, what could you tell them that motivates to help motivate them? Like what motivates you to be a runner, to do what you're doing? And Kim, maybe we'll start with you. Before you were at the level you're at now, you were still putting in the hard work, still training hard. What motivated you to keep pushing yourself?
I think I kind of touched on it earlier when we were talking a little bit about the mental stuff, but I think more than anything, I just love that afterglow of feeling like you worked really hard, and I always have, and so it doesn't really matter, what the times are that I'm hitting in the workouts or the races, because it's the effort, and I just love to feel like I've just laid my heart out there, and yeah, it's just a great feeling.
Gabe, how about you?
Yeah, I think, that motivation can come from a lot of different places. For me, I think for professional athletes and, regular runners alike, I think it's all about reaching your potential. And I think it's, as a cancer survivor, I guess, I've just seen that, our life is a gift, and I view my body as a gift, and, health as a gift in general. And I think that running is a beautiful way to use that gift, and it doesn't matter how fast you're going. It's it's all about enjoying your life, and I think running is something thousands of people enjoy, and I think it's an awesome way for us to just use the gifts that we have, and I just think it enhances our life in a lot of ways.
Julie, similarly for you, and I'll just one question just came in, and I see we do have several collegiate runners in here, so. Same thing. What motivates you, and any advice for collegiate runners that are getting started that may be, in the same position that you guys were in a few years ago?
Yeah, I have a lot of advice for collegiate runners because I was a decent collegiate runner, but not a great collegiate runner. I stayed in this sport because I always believed that there was something better for me. And I always felt like if I did everything right, that I could achieve something more. So I think the most important thing about running is that it's a journey and it's a process. And it doesn't matter if, your goal is, to break 25 minutes in a 5K, or if your goal is to break 15 minutes in a 5K, you line up a plan and you try to execute that plan given the resources and the circumstances that you have. And I think that's what's so cool about what we do is that, we're professional runners, but we're surrounded by a community of runners. There's so many people that pick up a pair of running shoes every single day and get out the door and do it. And a lot of them do it a lot earlier than the three of us do. And everyone kind of has this shared passion for the sport. But it really is a shared passion for, number one, running, but number two is staying in shape, and number three is setting goals and being able to achieve them. And we all have the ability to do those three things.
It's fantastic stuff from all you guys. We're just going to take a few minutes now to tell the folks about UCAN. And if you guys don't mind just sticking with us for about another 5-10 minutes, I just want to, if there's anything you want to add, I'm going to bring Seth on right now. And if there's anything that you wanted to add once he's done, then it would be, I'm sure it would be valuable for all the folks in the audience. But, UCAN, it's something that we've been talking about. And Seth, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Byron.
All right, so Seth's a registered dietitian, and he's going to tell you guys a little bit about what exactly UCAN is and the unique aspect of UCAN and what it does. So, Seth, take it away.
So Generation UCAN was actually, it's great that everybody's using it for sports and athletics and endurance now, but it was actually originally meant for medical purposes. Our founder's son has a very rare blood sugar disease called glycogen storage disease. And in this disease, you can't convert glucose out of your liver into your bloodstream, so they have no way of stabilizing their blood sugar. So basically, to give a little bit of background, the way we sleep throughout the night is actually our livers release glucose into our bloodstreams around 8 grams per hour, so we don't wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning with low blood sugar. But kids with this disease can't do this, so before the 70s, they simply couldn't survive infancy because they had no way to stabilize their sugars, and any carbohydrates they ate would overload in their liver because they couldn't release them. But later in the 70s, it was discovered that plain cornstarch, actually given 10 to 12 times a day and 3 or 4 times at night, will convert to glucose just enough to keep them alive. And then later in 2000, fast forward, superstarch was developed, and Jonah now, our founder's son in this picture, he takes a dose of superstarch and he sleeps all 8 hours. So that was the original purpose of UCAN, but sports dietitians and a lot of endurance coaches got hold of the product. They liked the science, and that's why it's used for fitness and general health, and especially for endurance and strength training and all different types of physical activity now.
So what exactly you referenced superstarch, Seth? And superstarch is it's the carbohydrate in UCAN. So rather than the simple sugars that you may find in your gels or your sports drinks, or a newer carbohydrate called maltodextrin that a lot of your newer sports nutrition products use, UCAN uses this superstarch. And what exactly is superstarch, Seth?
So there's a lot of noise on the market. There's lots of carbohydrate sport drinks and energy drinks and different waxy mazes and all things. But what makes superstarch so unique is that it's derived from non-GMO ground-up corn. There's a heat-moisture process that slows the release of the carbohydrates so it all doesn't dump into your bloodstream at once. So the enzymes attack slower. And there's no enzymes. There's no chemicals used to make this. It's simply all natural. And the main reason for that is because our first customers were 2-year-old babies with that rare disease. So that's why there's no enzymes and chemicals. And it's non-GMO and gluten-free. We have people with very serious celiac disease, a lot of runners actually, with serious celiac disease thriving on the product because how easy it is on their stomach and slowly releases into their body. And the big thing is that, for 8 years, the top carbohydrate researchers in the world were looking at the best carbohydrate to stabilize blood glucose longest in those young children. So to get the effects of this carbohydrate that we're going to describe, these carbohydrate researchers were looking at all different types of barleys and tapiocas and rices and wheats. But it turns out it's this non-GMO corn with this heat and moisture process that gives superstarch all the characteristics we're about to describe in our proven science.
So one of the big things that we heard Julie and Kim and Gabe all touch on was just that steadiness of energy. And we've heard Seth talk a little bit about stabilizing blood sugar, which is what you're going to see on this graph. So, Seth, walk us through what we're seeing here.
So the first thing is that what we really mean by stable blood sugar is that you don't want highs and lows in your blood sugar because you want to keep your energy steady so it's all releasing into your body and your cells and your brain at a steady rate. If energy comes into your body too quickly, your cells absorb it too quickly, and then your blood is left with nothing. And so much of the way we perceive fatigue and energy is tied into how stable our blood sugar is. And this might be why 4 o'clock in the afternoon someone might feel low, or why 11 o'clock when you might start getting hungry before lunch, you might have trouble concentrating because your blood sugar is starting to drop. And so that's why blood sugar is so important. So much of blood sugar is tied into fatigue. And so you see we're the red line, and a slight rise, but we stabilize. So we're really giving you little bits of energy over time, matching the rate your brain and your muscles need fuel, rather than causing those highs and lows that you can see in that maltodextrin product, which is very popular in your gels and your hammer products and a lot of those goos. And the big thing is that we stabilize, but then we decline steadily. And this is key because there's not that sudden drop in blood sugar. And the big thing is when you keep your blood sugar stable, you don't spike your blood sugar and you don't spike the hormone insulin. So with this blue line, you're seeing all the calories and sugars rush the bloodstream quickly. And when you spike your blood sugar, as you can see now, you see this big insulin spike. We'll get into insulin in a second. But when you spike your blood sugar because you're consuming, things like banana or cereal or a bagel before a long run, all those calories and sugars rush your bloodstream quickly after they're digested. And your body says, I have all this sugar in my blood. Don't burn fat. Burn the sugar first. But the big problem is that you want to use that fat for fuel because the adaptation to especially endurance exercise is the ability to mobilize and burn more fat and spare your glycogen, especially sparing that glycogen for the end of a run or to use it for that high intensity bout when you might sprint up that hill or just sprint in general. But the most remarkable finding amongst UCAN is that we completely flatline the hormone insulin. So to give you a perspective, when you spike your blood sugar because the calories and sugars rush your bloodstream quickly, like let's say when you have a gel, you spike your blood sugar because it enters so quickly, the hormone insulin comes into play and it wants to bring your blood sugar back down because it doesn't want you to have high blood sugar. But insulin has a second function in the body besides bringing your blood sugar back down, and its function is to tell your body to store fat. So you can't access this amazing pool of stored energy you have in your body, and you can't burn fat during when you spike your insulin. So it was so remarkable amongst all of our experts, top dietitian and endurance dietitians, is that because we completely flatline the hormone insulin throughout and post-exercise, we allow the body to significantly burn more fat throughout and post-exercise. And this was a study done at the University of Oklahoma on elite-level cyclists. They were hooked up to metabolic carts and intravenous blood draws, getting tested every 15 minutes, the level of insulin in their blood and the level that their body was burning fat.
Seth, I think it's apparent for everybody if you're trying to lean out that it's beneficial to be burning more fat and keeping your blood sugar stable so you can burn more fat during your exercise. What if you're somebody who's already lean and burning more fat for a body composition standpoint isn't really a focus of yours? What's the benefit of utilizing fat for fuel?
So there's a few benefits. The first thing is that the adaptation to endurance exercise in general is the ability to upregulate mitochondrial enzymes to burn more fat and spare your glycogen. So an endurance athlete wants to burn more fat because it's your store of body fat. Even you could be a lean runner, at 5% body fat, which I know is very lean for a woman, but you could be extremely lean and have 10 to 20 to 30,000 calories of fat, and you only have 2,000 calories of stored glycogen. So the thing you want to do is use that fat so you spare your glycogen, because once your glycogen gets low, that's what leads to that low and depleted feeling. It stimulates hunger, and your muscles don't have the carbohydrates they need to stay full. And the other big thing is that fat is an incredible fuel source. Fat has 9 calories per gram, whereas carbs only have 4. So when you break down a gram of fat, you get double the energy. But the big thing is, especially exercisers, we always think about calories as what we consume, our breads, our pastas, our rices, those calories. But the truth is, our best form of calories are internal calories, our stored fat calories. and you break those down, when you break down a gram of fat, those 3 fatty acids that you broke down, which is what a gram of fat breaks down into, they go right to your muscle cell, and your muscle cell uses that fat, and it spares that glycogen, so you save that glycogen for later, and you basically have an unlimited fuel source so you don't bonk. And as long as you keep your blood sugar steady, and that's why UCAN is so key, because it keeps your blood sugar steady while you burn fat. It's the ideal thing an athlete, and especially an endurance athlete, wants. But also a big thing is the more fat you burn for fuel, the less lactate builds up. So lactate is that burning feeling in your legs, especially as you push higher intensities. So there are a lot of performance benefits to burning fat, but many people find their heart rates are lower, so they can work out at higher intensities and not have their heart racing. So those are a few benefits of burning fat, even for the lean person.
So we in the context of our discussion, we heard Julie talking about, utilizing UCAN to help her not crash during a long run. I think the ability to stabilize blood sugar definitely comes into play over there, where Julie said she noticed a difference where she wasn't crashing in her long runs. And then with Kim talking about how, she felt like she was getting to a higher level in terms of becoming lean. I think what Seth was just talking about in terms of utilizing more of your fat stores either during exercise or post-exercise. A lot of carb and protein drinks that people have post-exercise will spike your blood sugar, spike your insulin, and prevent that post-workout fat burn, which is a great period of time for an athlete, for a runner, to burn fat. So when Kim's talking about using UCAN in between workouts or using it after a hard workout, that really is something that's contributing to that leanness, is by stabilizing blood sugar and allowing your body to keep burning that fat. So Seth, for folks that haven't tried UCAN, there's essentially 2 versions, the UCAN without protein and the UCAN with protein. Can you just tell us, what the difference is between each of those versions?
So these all 5 packets you're looking at all contain 30 grams of the carbohydrate. And as the runners today described, you can have a packet before a 30-minute speed workout, but it can last you up to 2 hours for that long run. So it's really versatile. The main thing is that the protein-enhanced version is versatile in that you can use it before or after. Some people like it before if they haven't eaten in a while, and there's 13 grams extra protein to help curb hunger in the stomach. But it's really great for recovery after a hard session. That we have the cran raspberry, lemonade, pomegranate. Those all contain added electrolytes. But a big thing is that UCAN is your fuel source, not your hydration. So you still would want to consume water or sugar-free electrolytes on the side. But mainly have the sports drink mix beforehand, the protein mix after. And if you're someone who tends to get hungry before a run, some people like the protein before, but in a small amount of people, protein before exercise can bother the stomach. So that's a consideration. Another big thing is that when you're using this carbohydrate, especially the lemonade, the pomegranate blueberry, or the cran raspberry, you can use as little water as you like. Some people, we found that from one runner, she mixes it up into a paste and eats it with a spoon. But it's a starch, so you want to use roughly 8 to 12 ounces of cold water, and just shake it hard before you run.
Couple points to Julie was talking about, or everybody really talking about the UCAN lasting for 90 minutes to 2 hours. And if you see the caloric content on the sports drink mix, 110 to 130 calories. If you're used to the traditional method of fueling with gels, you may sort of say to yourself, that doesn't really add up. I mean, I'm taking a gel every 30 minutes and it's got 100 calories and it's got about 30 grams of carbs. How are 30 grams of carbs and 100 odd calories lasting me for 90 minutes to 2 hours? And, I think the key point is that the calories in UCAN are very efficient. The carbohydrate releases very slowly. So you're getting every gram is being utilized for energy because you're not flooding your system with excess carbs. And then there's the whole point that Seth was just talking about the utilization of your fat calories as a fuel source. When you're able to use fat for fuel, you're not as reliant on consuming as many external carbohydrates or external calories. So that's a big point. If you're looking on the screen and saying to yourself, the math doesn't really add up. That's really what's going on in your body. And ultimately that's something you'll put to the test in your workouts and you'll find yourself. The second important point is that you really want to think of UCAN as a pre-workout snack. So it's not a traditional sports drink that you're sipping on throughout exercise. It's really something that, even though it is in a liquid form, think of it like a bar, or think of it like that bagel you might eat before a workout. You want to consume it all within a 5 to 10 minute span, and then allow it to slowly release into your body. 5 to 10 minutes isn't that specific, but in a relatively short period of time, and then consume it. And it's roughly, we had a couple people asking here in the chat, how long before a workout should you consume it? It can really be, 30 minutes to an hour before a workout, and you should feel that nice, steady, and even energy. So finally, Seth, just
Vaughn, I just want to say one thing. For those people that are morning runners that are waking up and getting out the door, you can with 6 ounces, and by the time you put on your shoes and socks, and some people make it the night before, so it'll start to kick in within the first 10 or 15 minutes of your run. So if you're a 5 a.m. runner, this is what I do sometimes when I go for an hour morning run. I'll make it the night before. I'll be able to shake it up and have it, and it'll start to kick in within the first 10 or 15 minutes anyway, if I'm having it 15 or 20 minutes before my run starts. So it's just a point to consider just for practicality.
Here we're looking at just the what people are replacing with one packet of UCAN. And again, just to illustrate some of the points we've been talking about, when you're getting the fuel at a very steady and even rate, you're less reliant on all the external calories. So for a 2-hour run, somebody may typically have a gel before and then have 3 gels over the course of the 2-hour run. A total of 400 calories, 4 gels, and we're just really not seeing that anymore with UCAN. One UCAN, as all of these athletes spoke to today, is something that's going to carry them through that 90 minutes to 2 hours. And in a lot of cases, even when they're really pushing the intensity, it's still because the extent to which they're utilizing their own fat stores for fuel, it's really still lasting them that long. Seth, anything to add here?
I just think the main thing is that when you're using, gels and things, you have to use a lot more calories, and then because you have to compensate for the spike and crash effect, and the calories enter the bloodstream too quickly. Your body doesn't need all that energy at once, and it's just so important because your brain needs a steady source of fuel. Neurons, which is the cells in your brain, they can't store glucose. So you need a very steady release of glucose into your bloodstream so your brain can have a steady release. And so that's so important for maintaining focus, especially when you're going out for that 2-hour run and you're deep into your run. You got to keep your brain happy too.
So just a couple more quick points and we'll wrap this up. In summary, the best times to use UCAN, Seth, what would you say?
All right, Seth, 30 minutes before your run. Definitely afterward, especially after an hour or longer run. I mean, that's just so key to keep your blood sugar steady. I forgot who said it, but I love that word, appetite regulation. I forgot who said that tonight, but that was just really just a key way to talk about why the recovery formula is so important. And then even those people that who love running, but they might on days where they're at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, instead of reaching for a third cup of coffee or grabbing a granola bar or reaching for some sugary bar, having a UCAN at your desk at 2 or 3 o'clock keeps your blood sugar steady. You'll go into dinner with very stable blood sugar, so you'll likely eat less calories or be able to not overeat. It's just such a key time to use it. And then just some creative ways to make a meal replacement shake. I just it's been interesting because a lot of people, especially in the running community, might think to load up on carbohydrates 3 hours before a marathon. And we've had people using our vanilla and chocolate protein-enhanced UCAN and making a shake. They might add a tablespoon or 2 of peanut butter and maybe a little bit of fruit, maybe like a third of a banana or half a cup of raspberries, as their breakfast shake 2 or so hours before a full marathon. And then they'll have their UCAN 30 minutes before, and they've been kind of replacing that bagel with peanut butter before, 3 hours before with a UCAN shake, and it's been a creative way. And we had one person who just PR'd for Boston, and she had a vanilla UCAN at 5 a.m. in the morning with a tablespoon of peanut butter. She had 2 Palm Blue packets 30 minutes before, And then at mile 16.5, she had another pomegranate blueberry. So, and she PR'd for Boston, and it was great to hear. So that's just a way to use it for a longer marathon, if anyone's curious.
Julie, I know you recently had a write-up in New York Roadrunner magazine where you were talking about some of your smoothie recipes. What's your go-to UCAN smoothie?
Ooh, my favorite one is my recovery one that I do with the chocolate recovery packet, and I like to do that with peanut butter and rice milk, and sometimes I add frozen berries into that too. But for the most part, it just becomes this with banana. Sorry, that's the other thing. Banana, chocolate packet, and rice milk, and a scoop of peanut butter, and it's like this chocolate banana smoothie, and it is incredible. You don't even realize how good you are, like all the good things that you are doing for your body with that shake.
Kim, how about you? I know you get creative with the smoothies too.
My favorite one is actually exactly the same, just with vanilla soy milk. So vanilla soy milk, a banana, chocolate, and like a heaping teaspoon of peanut butter. And it is so good. The first time I made it, I almost felt guilty. Like I was like, did I just go in and out and get a chocolate shake? Because this is like so delicious.
Same. That's awesome.
Gabe, are you creative with the blender yourself? Are you whipping up UCAN into any smoothies?
Yes, I am. I don't think I'm quite as creative. I have tried some variation of what I think they both mentioned that at some point, so I've tried that, but I can't take credit for it on my own. But I think, after a morning workout, I'm always, I'm a simple person. I just go for my caffeine fix, and so I'll mix like a chocolate protein UCAN and put my little Starbucks Via packet in it and some ice, and that is my go-to.
I got to tell you, that's what you said is precisely what I'm sipping on right now. So it's
all right.
Oh my God.
It's a pretty effective.
Delicious.
Sure is. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It's been fantastic. I'm just gonna let Julie, Kim, and Gabe each just say a word before we sign off. For all of you folks who joined tonight, if you do want to try out UCAN, or if you're a UCAN user and you want to get some more, if you use the code WomenRun at our online store, you see the URL generationyoucan.com/store on your screen. The code is WOMENRUN, Women Run, for anybody who's not in front of the screen and listening on the phone. You will save 15%. So we really appreciate everyone sticking with us and joining us tonight. If we have any retailers on the line, please shoot us an email, and we'll definitely give you a special offer on your next order. So you can shoot us an email at info@ucanco.com, and we will absolutely take care of you. And finally, if your local running store doesn't carry UCAN, please do have them email us. We want to make it available to you folks and make it convenient for you to get. So we'll be happy to provide your store with samples. But before we sign off, maybe we'll just go in reverse order from how we started. Gabe, anything you want to close with before we sign off tonight?
Oh, no, thank you for having me. Thank you to UCAN for supporting us three runners and for supporting women's health and fitness, and I appreciate your support on my journey as a runner, but best wishes to everybody who is continuing their training, and I look forward to seeing Kim and Julie soon, hopefully.
Awesome, and thanks a lot for joining us, Gabe. Thanks for giving us some time from your evening tonight. Kim, go ahead.
Thanks for a good evening, and I think all three of us are on Twitter, and I don't know about the other two, but I'm often answering people's questions about how I use UCAN. So if people have follow-up questions after this webinar, then feel free to hit us up.
I just put Kim's Twitter handle in there, and I think you guys won't mind if I shout you out either, right? Gabe and Julie, you guys are okay with us putting your Twitter handles in the chat?
Yeah, please do.
All right.
Of course.
So we got Kim and we got Julie, and you know what? I added an extra L to Julie's last name, so there's Julie. We've got Gabe as well right there. So yeah, definitely all three social media extraordinaires. So definitely hit them up. And Julie, finally, let's close with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the other ladies here and to Varen and Seth. I really appreciate you guys doing this. It's important for us as athletes to always have kind of an open conversation, and you know, we learn from each other. You'd be surprised at the amount of talking that goes on amongst us, sharing ideas. That's how you know, I introduced to Kim at least to start talking to her about Gen UCAN. So the conversation doesn't have to stop here. If people want to contact us via Twitter, we'd definitely be open to keeping the conversation open and continuing to do what's best in the name of our sport.
And we're excited to see all you guys. Several World Track and Field Championships. We got the U.S. Championships coming up this summer. All of you guys expected to participate in some form. So a lot of exciting races coming up. Racing season is upon us. Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing you guys compete, and I look forward to catching up with all you guys at some point over the year. So thanks again to everybody for joining us tonight. The webinar will be available, a recording of this. We'll post it on our social media in case you want to listen in on anything you might have missed while we were going live. Really appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.